I've got 12:01. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name's Mark West with HGA Fundraising. Jason and Trevor are off this week. They took a vacation and they're with their spouses and families in Cabo and headed back today. So with me today is my great friend, Mr. Scotty Gibbs. Scotty is a tremendous fundraising auctioneer and auctioneer in general. And Scotty is the 2021 Texas State Auctioneer Champion. He was just crowned that back in the spring. And he just came back from competing at the International Auctioneer Championship with the National Auctioneers Association. So I'm very excited to have Scotty here today. And we are going to be talking about some other ways of raising money, some other fundraising games. And the first game we're going to talk about today, it has several different names. It's been around for probably 3 or 4 years. And I call it Last Champion Standing. Some people call it Last Hero Standing. There's all different kind of names for it. It is not a game of chance. It is basically a game of if you are willing to keep donating, you can win the prize. And it's something that you can walk in and take an item off your silent auction table and turn it around with this game and raise about 10 times the value with it. I'm gonna let Scotty talk about how he did this recently with an organization here. And this is something that Scotty and I use in most of our events. So take it away, Scotty.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everybody, or I guess afternoon. So the Last Champion is something that has worked really well for Mark. It's worked well for me. Mark and I work together a lot on events here in the San Antonio area, and so we did an event in the spring. We arrived and we asked them, are you doing a Last Champion? It was one of those situations where another friend of ours was an auctioneer. He had a death in the family. He was out of town and we were conducting the auction for him. So we kind of had to get up to speed, if you will. So we get there, we meet the folks that were managing on site, and we talked about Last Champion. And they said, well, no, we're not doing a Last Champion. Really don't even know what that is. And I said, well, are you doing a silent auction? And they said, well, we are doing a silent auction. I said, do you happen to have, and this was an outdoor group. And so I said, do you happen to have a gun in like a $600 range? And they said, well, absolutely. We've got an M&P Smith & Wesson 22 rifle that we could pull. And so this was a gun, had a scope on it. So it was valued at about $600. So imagine, having access to the internet and being able to look up the gun and it being in a silent auction. What would you pay for a $600 gun in the silent auction? I'm going to go out on a limb and say most of you might get up to the $600 limit, and that's about all you'd pay for a $600 gun, right? So we got them to pull the gun, and we'd explained how the Last Champion works. And so for those of you who don't know how the Last Champion works, I'll do a quick explanation. So, and I always do this whenever I'm up on stage. So we have the item, whatever it is we're selling. Now in this scenario, it's a gun, $600 gun, but it's an outdoor group. It could be a great wine package. It could be a trip somewhere. You have to cater to your group as to what would be very enticing for them. And the way that we use the Last Champion is in the fund to need or the paddle raise. It's going to be the last level. So, if you've done a $1,000 level, 750, 500, 250, 100, we're going to use this at that $100 level. And so we have the whatever item that we're using, and in this scenario it was the gun, and so I have Mark, he's one of the ringmen, and then we have another ringman, and we explain, that if you raise your paddle, you're donating $100 every time you raise your paddle. And when you do, at that moment, you are the champion. You are the last champion. And before we say SOLD, sold, as long as no one else raises their paddle, then you are the last champion and you win the gun. And so I'll pick someone on the left-hand side of the room, someone on the right-hand side of the room to use as an example. And I'll say, ma'am, would you raise your paddle? She raises her paddle. I said, thank you, ma'am. You just donated, hypothetically, $100 in the last champion. Now, before I say SOLD, and I look over to my other side of the room and I say, sir, if you would raise your paddle, and he goes ahead and raises his paddle. I said, now, I didn't say sold. So now this gentleman is the last champion. So this lady over here has donated $100. This gentleman over here has now donated $100. And before I say SOLD, sold, this lady over here, ma'am, would you raise your paddle one more time? And she raises hers. And I said, now she's the last champion. And she has now donated $200 because she's now raised her paddle twice in the process. And before I can say SOLD, sold, the gentleman does his. He's now donated $200. Before I say SOLD, sold, she's now raised her paddle once again. She's now donated $300. And then we make it very clear that if you've raised your paddle 3 times during the process from beginning to end, before we say SOLD, sold, how much have you donated? And then the whole room will say $300. And we're like, exactly right. So you need to make sure you've got it clear to everyone that every time they raise their paddle, they're donating $100. And so what we have found with Last Champion is that it becomes very fun in the sense that it's a game because, you have someone you're about to say SOLD, sold. And before you do that, someone else raises their paddle. Well, now they're the last champion and it was the takeaway. And so now they're the last champion. And so it ends up being very fun. But in this scenario, and I'll close and I want to give one more example. In this scenario, we had a $600 gun that they pulled out of the silent auction that at best would have brought $600 in the silent auction, maybe $700 if somebody felt really generous. That night, we raised $7,200 on that gun. So we had 72 people, or 72 paddles at some point go in the air as a donation during that process. And I saw that Dean said, congrats, Scotty, on winning the 2021 state championship. Dean, thank you so much for that. I consider myself extremely blessed to have won the state championship this year in Texas. Tremendous talent. And then I went to compete in the IEC and I saw, a tremendously talented group of men and women compete up there. But I'm pretty confident. I'm going to go out on a limb and say not a one of us, no matter how good we are going to be able to auction a $600 gun and get $7,200 for it. It's just not going to happen. But because it's a game, it's fun. It's a game of chance. It's that last minute takeaway. You'll be amazed at the number of paddles that go up, and you have friends at a table. And next thing you know, let's just say Mark and I are sitting at a table. And I see the question from Dean. I'm going to answer that here in just a moment. So we're sitting at a table, and next thing you know, Mark's the last champion, and because he and I are friends, I throw in $100 and I take it from him, and he's like, "Oh no, you're not going to do that." Next thing you know, he takes it. I've seen family members. I was sitting there watching a grandfather at the table. You could tell he was the grandfather, had some grandchildren with him, and the grandfather, he kept getting back in at that $100 level, and next thing you know, his grandson took it from him. I said, young man, is that your grandfather? And he said, yeah. And he just laughed. The whole crowd laughed. And the grandfather was like, he looks at the grandson like, I can't believe you just did that. But the point is, you've got a game of fun. You've got a game of chance. It's all about timing. And then obviously it's for a good cause. And you've obviously set that up in your fund to need or your paddle raise of what that money, being that ambassador for the organization. and making sure that you've made that emotional connection with the audience, so that they know what that money is going for, and are willing to open their hearts and open their wallets and support that. So and what we have found is that more times than not, and we typically use those. So Dean asked, what is the best price point? Is it under 1,000? And in the scenarios that I have used and seen, it's probably that $600-700 range. It is under 1,000. Does it have to be? No, it doesn't. You probably want to change your increments from $100, based on, if you get into those several $1,000 items. Let's just say you're given a vacation package, and your price point on that vacation package is $3,000. Well, maybe that $100 increment is not the right increment on a $3,000 package. Or if you do start at the $100 level, maybe you change to a $250 level along the way, because you have to look at what the cost point is on the item. Now, of course, if it's completely donated and there's no cost to the item at all, then that's something, worth considering as well. But what we have found in the game, the last champion standing, is that most of the time, whatever the value of the item is, it's going to bring 6 to 10 times in value of what it is. So in that scenario, it was a $600 gun that brought, $7,200. I mean, that's over 10 times the value of that gun. Probably gets more close to 12 times. There have been other scenarios that we've had, where we've seen it, bring 6 times. But I would say, as a worst case scenario, you're probably looking at a minimum of 4 times what the value of the item is. It's going to bring at least 4 times that value. So if you got a $500 item, you're going to it's going to get to that $2,000 point. And that's at the $100 increment. Now, of course, if you have those higher dollar items, you need to be considering adjusting your increments a little bit. But it's a great game. People love chance. People love having a good time. And at $100, and then another question is possibly, well, how much time does it take? I mean, we can raise that $7,200 in 10 minutes. So if you're talking about, is it worth putting that in my timeline, my run of show for the evening? Do you have 10 minutes, and are you willing to make $3,600 to $7,200 in that 10 minutes or more, depending on what your item is? Going back to Dean's question, on the price point, with the right package, let's say you use one of HGA Fundraising's vacation packages. Maybe it's a $3,600 trip. With the right increments, you might get $20,000 raised on that. At a $250 or maybe a $500 increment. So that's kind of my take on Last Champion. I think you need to, do a great job of setting up your fund to need in the beginning. Make it emotional. Make it known what your cause is. Be that ambassador, and then when you get to that $100 level, fully explain the game that you're about to play. And give an example. I mean, having your rules up on the screen is important if you want to do that, but also, give that real life example in the room so that everybody sees how it's going to play out in a hypothetical situation before you start. And I think that's about all I have. But I would highly encourage it. We love it. We use it a lot, and we're very successful with it. Mark, that's over for me.
All right. So, this to elaborate a little bit on Dean's question, this game was invented by Chad Carvey, who is a benefit auctioneer out on the West Coast. We've had Chad on one of our webinars in the past talking about buy-in events, and Chad does some very high-end events out there, $500,000 a ticket and more. And, events where they raise $200,000 in the live auction. And Chad uses, I think it's a Tuscany trip, worth at least $2,000 sometimes in those events as the prize. And he will raise $20,000 and more with this technique. Now, one of the things that you kind of run up against is as Scotty mentioned, you know, this took about 10 minutes, is you don't want to run it along too long, because other people in the room will get bored. You'll start losing their attention, depending on what you got coming up after the last champion. You know, you want to keep people engaged. So if it looks like it's going to be going on too long at the $100 level, then you can raise it. You know, you have to let everybody know, okay, from now on, when you raise your paddle, it's $200 donation. And that can kind of help move things along. Now, in some of Chad's events, I've heard him talk about getting up to $500 and $1,000, you know, but it's something that you can use in any event, no matter if it's a, you know, $50 ticket or a $2,000 ticket to get in. You can use this in any event. Now, Scotty keeps saying it's a game of chance. I disagree. I say it's not a game of chance, because if you're just willing to make that $100 donation and be the last person and keep making that donation, you can win. You just have to outlast everyone else. There's no drawing. There's nothing like that where there's any kind of chance involved. Now, don't come to me for legal advice. You know, depending on your state, you know, find out from your local authorities or your legal counsel how this game falls in. But to me and to Chad, this is not a game of chance. Now, Michelle asks, since you're adding the item during FAN, does the donation no longer count as 100%? I would say that every donation in this counts 100% as a donation, because if you don't win the prize, you know, you've donated that. There's nothing for you. So, and you know, once again, you'll need to talk to your legal counsel, your accountant, wherever you are, and decide on that. But to me, it's a donation, and that's the way we bring this up. The way we address this, we don't call it a bid, we call it a donation, because they're not bidding, they're donating. And
yeah, and Mark, that's an excellent point. So whenever I'm calling out the numbers as we go through for last champion, I do call it you know, donor 113. Donor 125 is now our last champion. I do emphasize that donation piece, and as far as the, you know, the chance, maybe I should more so refer it. It's a game of timing, because
yes, absolutely.
Because you're right. It's you know, it's not like you've got a 1 in 100 chance. It is really more a game of timing.
Strategy.
So it's a strategy, and
game of strategy.
And it's funny, you'll watch it as people start getting the hang of it. You will see that strategy come into place with your audience as they're making those donations. As you say, SOLD, and boom, there it comes up. You know, they're waiting on that timing, and so and it's very fun. So you're right, Mark. It's more of a game of timing and not chance. So my apology for that.
And I had seen the winner be someone who only donated the one time, but they waited and you know, threw their paddle up, and then nobody else raised their paddle before I said sold, and so they ended up winning. There's so many things at play with this game. There's the competitive factor, and oftentimes at these events, you know, you've got people with means, and many of them are very competitive, and so they want to win. It's about winning the prize, and for many of them as well, you get to where they've invested so much, they've donated so many times already, that they feel like they have to keep donating, or else they've just more or less wasted everything they've done before. You know, we keep saying it's a donation, it's going to a good cause, but that comes into play as well. It's a lot of fun. People love it. Even the people who don't donate enjoy it. You just have to make sure that your auctioneer keeps things moving at a good pace and that you don't take up too much time doing it. Now, this game is labor intensive on the back end. You will need, I always like to have at least 3 people writing down the bid numbers, because it's easy to miss, because sometimes this gets moving pretty quickly. You'll have multiple paddles go up at once, and so then your auctioneer is calling out all of those numbers, and it's easy to miss one, and you don't want to do that. So I always try and have at least 3 people clerking, writing down the bid numbers. We've got a couple of spreadsheets to help with that. One of them is will give you a running total as you're going along, so your auctioneer can just turn and ask, how much have we raised so far? And you can immediately say, well, we're at $4,600 right now. And so that always brings some energy to the room and to the game as well. But then the other thing you have to do is, after the game is over, you have to go back and tally up how much each person donated, so that at the end of the night, you'll have an accurate bill for them. So it is a bit labor intensive, but it's well worth the payoff. Lauren asks, have you ever seen it done electronically with electronic donations via an app on the phone? No. One of the things about this game is it's important to see who the last donor is, to know who the last donor is. And bid cards are essential to this. This is another reason you want to have bid cards at your event. It allows you to do multiple things with them besides just use them in the live auction. If doing this on a phone, there would be no way to know who was making the donation and who was truly the last person now. You've got to do it with bid cards. I worked an event one time where we did this, and for whatever reason, the organization issued bid cards in favor of wristbands, and the wristband had like a 4-digit number on it. Well, no one could see the wristband, so it took a lot longer because we had to ask each donor what their number was and get it written down, because they couldn't just hold it up and we could see it. So that's very, very important to have the bid cards. Don't you agree, Scotty?
Absolutely, 100%. And for me, I like the bid card in the room, as you said, for a number of reasons. In the live auction, I love seeing the bid card go in the air. In the last champion standing, I love to see, and even during the paddle race, I like to see, some people either stand and raise it or raise it from their table. I mean, they are showing that they are committed to the cause, and I find that it's very motivating. If you and I are good friends and colleagues, and if you make a $100 donation, I feel compelled to make a $100. If Mark can do it, I can do it, that sort of thing. And so you get into that psychology of it. And then some of the other games that we're going to talk about later in this broadcast is, utilizing that. So there are many reasons to have that bid paddle and or donor paddle, and in the last champion standing fund to need, I refer to them as donor number,
Yes.
not bid number.
Yes, you want to make sure people understand it's not a bid, because a bid they're not responsible for if they don't get it. They don't owe that $100. It's a donation. Every time they raise a paddle, it's a donation. Now, you do need to promote this prior to the beginning of your event. So during the cocktail hour, you know, while people are walking around looking at the live auction items and the silent auction items, it's a great idea to have your last champion prize on display, and have, hopefully you're using professional ringmen, and you'll have one of them standing there next to it. And as people come up, I always say, hey, we're not selling this item tonight, we're giving it away. And people always say, really, what do you mean? And I say, well, all you have to do is be the last person to donate $100 and you win this. And then I smile and say, it's very simple, but it's not easy. And that creates a lot of curiosity and a lot of buzz, and gives me the opportunity to explain, you know, how the game works. But so that when it does come around time for the game, many people in the room already have an understanding. And depending on when you do your live ask or your paddle raise, if you do it at the beginning of the fundraising before the live auction, the last champion is a great way to transition into the excitement of a live auction, because everybody's fired up, everybody's excited and had a good time either playing this game or watching it being played.
So Mark, I'd like to add to that. I agree with absolutely everything Mark said, and one of the things that you know that I like to do is, and I'll even put it in my contract or on my invoice as I'm explaining the services that we provide, and that is working. So the live auction table. So it's, you know, as a fundraising and benefit auctioneer, and I see a couple of my clients on this call, and you know, I put it in my contract or in my invoice that I give to them that I am working the live auction table. And why is that? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, I want to establish a relationship with everyone there that evening that stops by, so that before I go on stage, they know who I am. Secondly, I'm talking about the mission of the organization while I'm at that live auction table. So I'm serving as an ambassador for the organization, talking about, you know, thanking people for coming out. You know, so glad to have you tonight. You know, coming out to whatever the fundraiser is, talking about the organization. You know, we could not do this without you tonight. Our goal, our financial goal tonight is, and I talk about the goal, and everything that they're doing there that night is making a positive impact on the organization and the mission of that organization. And then, of course, you know, you're talking about the live auction items, because some people may come through the door and not even know there was a live auction that night, or a fund to need that night, or you know, a last champion standing, or paddle drop, or whatever it is that we're doing that night. And so that gives us an opportunity to be there and talk about all those aspects of the fundraising that is going to go on that night, and be that ambassador for the organization.
Okay, any questions on the last champion or the last hero? All right. Well, just you know, throw them out there in the chat or in the Q&A if you have any. So another revenue generator that Scotty and I like to use is something that we call the paddle drop. And this isn't something we invented at all, but it's a great way of scooping up donations at the very end of your event and bringing in another $2,000 and up that normally would have walked out the door. And it's just like it sounds, a paddle drop. You need a prize for it, something with broad appeal. The same with the last champion prize. Whatever prize you use, it needs to be something with broad appeal, something that a lot of people would be interested in and a lot of people would want. So, you know, what what we've used before with the paddle drop prize. We've used like a small Yeti cooler with some things to go in that cooler, and then like $100 or $200 gift card to a local meat market, so that we've got a $400 or $500 package put together for the prize. And then you just tell the people, we're going to be coming around with some baskets, and if you drop your paddle in the basket, you'll be making a $50 donation and be entered in an immediate drawing for this prize package. Now you can set that level at whatever you want, but since we normally do the last champion right before this at the $100 level, then we make the $50 level for the paddle drop. Scotty, you got anything on that? Anything you want to add?
Just to emphasize on the paddle drop, that is so while it's that last increment of donation, move that to the very end of your program. So the fund a need has been conducted. All of your auction items have been conducted. Once you do the paddle drop, you do not need the paddle for anything else. That is the last thing, because you're physically taking that paddle from the donor, from the bidder, and placing it in a basket. So we typically reserve that for the very, very end of the evening. Once all the other elements of the fundraising have been conducted. And as Mark was saying, you're a $50 donation, that's a great value that if you've got number one, some people will do it just because it's $50 and they want to donate $50. It's a nice level, just to say, absolutely, man, what a great evening it's been. What a great cause. I am so happy to donate $50, where they may not even know what the prize is. The fact is, you just asked for a $50 donation and they gave it. And then secondly, if you do have a great prize, that chance again, people do love a game of chance, and it's like, I'll certainly be in for $50 on winning that nice wine package, or steak package, or whatever the situation is, whatever you have. So it's just a nice fun way to conclude the evening, conclude the fundraising activities, and everybody, when their name is drawn, or when that number is drawn, you get that excited jump, and yeah, I won, and they come up to say, so it's just a nice fun way to raise, like Mark was saying. I mean, think about that. If you have, 50 at $50, and you had, 50 people in the room, donate. I mean, you're talking about $2,500 that you just raised there. If you had a $500 item, that's $2,000 profit, and it took you, 5 minutes to conduct it. So it's a great way to end the evening for numerous reasons: money, donations, time, and fun.
So Lauren has a good question again. Do you have to qualify the paddle drop as a raffle? The paddle drop is a raffle. I don't think there's anyone that would argue otherwise with that. You're making a $50 donation for the chance to win a prize. That is a raffle. So depending on the laws where you are, you would need to take that into account. But yes, the paddle drop is a raffle, but it's a great way, like Scotty said, pick up an extra $2,000 or more at the end of your event that normally would have just walked right out the door. So, and that's another reason to use the bid paddle. It's a great fundraising tool, and like Scotty said, you want to do this as usually the last thing, or one of the last things in your fundraising segment. This is also a little bit labor intensive, because you are going to need people to go around and pick up the paddles, and then you're going to have to sort those paddles and add a $50 donation to each bid number in your accounting software. So give yourself time to do that. You know, what we will often do with it is, let's say we have the paddle raise at the beginning of the fundraising, then we'll do the last champion and then transition into the live auction. And then at the end of the live auction, when you don't need those bid paddles anymore, that's the time you would do the paddle drop, pick up those paddles, and then maybe if you've got raffle drawings or a wine pool, or you know, you've got speakers then to come on, that gives you time to get all of your tallying done and get those invoices made for your donors.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Mark. So at the end there, what do you think, Mark? Maybe about 20. You know, give yourself 20 minutes to take care of all the paperwork on the back end, up at the
yeah, I would say
desk.
At least, you know, depending on how many volunteers you've got to do that, you want to definitely be sure that by the time your program is over, that you've got all those invoices completed and ready to go for your donors. And if you're using electronic bidding and you can just send them an electronic invoice, that's even better. So any questions on the paddle drop or on the last champion? Or on any fundraising games? Anyone have any fundraising? Go ahead, Scotty.
On the items that are being, you know, whether it be the last champion, whether it be the paddle drop, on those items that they're winning, what is your, you know, as we talk to all of our organizations that we work with, do you encourage them to get a donor to underwrite that item to serve as a, number one, obviously a fully donated item, and then number two, you know, as we're doing that last champion or we're doing the paddle drop, you know, this is the prize underwritten by, you know, John.
Sure, yes, you definitely want to recognize your donors for those items.
Yeah.
And that's what I do with my clients is, as donations are coming in, you know, we start identifying items that could be used as a last champion prize or as a paddle drop prize. And you know, there's no reason to actually go out and buy something. Usually, you know, you'll get something in a donation. And you know, once again, for example, with the paddle drop, you know, you're going to raise more money with that item in the paddle drop than you would if you'd left it in the silent auction. Almost always, you know, you don't want to put an item worth, you know, maybe $2,000 or $3,000 that you might put in your silent auction and then put it in a $50 paddle drop. That would probably be something you would want to use for the last champion prize, you know. But once again, mass appeal. You want something that's going to appeal to a lot of people. You can put items together in bundles. I've had organizations do that. You know, they'll have maybe a nice piece of ladies' jewelry and a nice $200 or $300 gift card to a very nice local restaurant. Throw a couple of other items in there with that. Get it up to, you know, $600 or $700. I like to see last champion prizes worth at least that amount. And, you know, the more valuable it is, the more you're going to raise. So, you know, keep that in mind. But you also want to keep in mind your timeline and not spending, you know, 30 minutes on the last champion, because you're going to lose people. You want to keep it to, you know, 10, 12 minutes, somewhere around in there. And it's sometimes, you know, it seems like, well, if you'd have kept going, you could have raised more money. But you reach a point of diminishing returns with that, because you don't want to lose the whole room or half the room when you've got other things coming up after that. You want to keep people's attention. All right. So No questions. So let me ask y'all to do this for me. So we're gonna give away a package here. And last week, Trevor had kind of an Oprah moment, and they gave away 18 packages last week. So I don't know who won last week. So if you did not win a package last week, would you hit that raise hand button down there at the bottom? And then we'll pick a winner from that. If everybody could just go in and hit that raise hand. And if I can figure out how to see those, then let's see.
So I've got the participant listing, and I see a number of hands out to the right. You know, so Becky, Michelle, Fred, Robin. You got to scroll to the top there. Robin, Lauren, Arlene, Laura, Alexa.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
Sandra.
Okay. So if you have not won in the past, let me put it that way. If you've won in the past, take your hand down. And if not, leave it up. So our winner is Laura Christensen. Laura Christensen, you are our winner. Let me get your, we will send you an email probably tomorrow with the details of your prize. And it'll be something you can use in your next fundraiser coming up. Let me get that written down. So thank you everyone for attending today. We're gonna get out a little soon today. It's only 12:43, but I feel like we had a good webinar today. We'll be sending out the email tomorrow. We'll have Scotty's contact information in there. Feel free to contact him if you have any questions or you know, are looking for an auctioneer in the state of Texas. And we thank everyone for tuning in today. So have a great weekend. Thank you, Scotty. Appreciate you, brother.
Mark, thanks for having me on today, ladies and gentlemen. It was a privilege to be with you today. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us, and y'all have a blessed day.